We'll start things off from a UI perspective and showcase a couple of web testing scenarios, followed by API and email end-to-end scenarios as well. If we go over to Provar automation, we can see that we have a number of different connections that we've already created. Okay, so let's look at our test folder here, and we can see we have a number of different folders that we've created to organize our test cases. We have one for our APIs, our existing users, and our end-to-end test cases as well. So if we're a guest user, one of the common scenarios would just be browsing and purchasing a product on the Commerce Cloud instance. So let's go ahead and open up this test case here and go into our test builder. Then it's going to navigate to a specific top seller page, and then it's going to be applying a couple of different filters. We've already added some filters here to find a specific item, and it adds it to our cart relatively quickly. Then we can continue on, and it's going to be going through the checkout process, adding in some shipping information. And then lastly, we'll have our complete payment and place order for this particular checkout. So we can go ahead and just resume through here. And after we do that, we have an order confirmation. So we have an assertion here inside of Provar to validate that order confirmation is appearing on the screen. So this shows a very basic scenario of how we would automate a guest checkout process inside of Provar automation. This end-to-end flow will cover UI testing, email validations, and APIs as well. So we have all those connections created here in Provar, and we can see our end-to-end user journey test case here, which is going to go through the process of creating a new account through the API, logging into that account in the UI, adding a customer address using the API, adding a credit card payment in the UI, and then going and purchasing a product using those default payment methods and shipping address, and then verifying the custom order through the APIs as well. And there will be an email validation after the purchase of the product has been made. So let's go ahead and jump into Test Builder. Okay, so we'll go ahead and resume it through here, and we'll see very quickly it was able to create an account through the API. If we snap back over to Provar and look at our variables here, we can actually inspect this a little bit further to see what's happening. We'll see our REST response, which contains our customer ID, our customer number, and basically the response from that API of that user being created. So we now have a new user that we can log into through Commerce Cloud. Now, if we can just go ahead and resume, we'll go ahead and complete the login process for that new user. Once that's been done and we validated that the dashboard has been loaded, we can add a customer address using the API once again. This will happen very quickly. So if we refresh the page here, we won't see the actual address show up in the address book, but if we go to add new and go to address book here, we can see it's added a new address to the user's page. So if we go to our account page, it won't necessarily show up here, but it is there on the back end. And we can see that if we go into Provar, once again, we can see that the status code came back as 200. And if we look at our REST response, once again here, we see that the full address came back and has been validated. Okay, now we can add a credit card payment through the UI. So this will be actually happening in front of us. So we'll see adding in that information here, setting it as the default payment and clicking save, and then validating that that payment has been added as the default. Now we're going to go and just refresh this page and make sure all the settings are taking effect before we continue on to another callable test case, which is going to go through the purchasing of a new product. This will happen rather quickly, but it's going to cycle through a couple of items here, add those to our cart, go to the checkout, and we should select our default shipping address as well as our default payment method, enter in our security code there, and then validate once that email has been received, the order number and the shipping address are correct. So we see that came through and happened rather fast, but if we go ahead and expand the complete products here, we can see the validate email confirmation. We basically had a wait for condition that was looking for that message to show up in our inbox, and then it validated, as I stated, the confirmation of the order number value, the shipping address, and the order total. So if we go and look at our actual email inbox, we'll be able to see that as well. And here we have our order confirmation that shows up here with our order number and all the information. So that all looks good. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is verify everything using an API call, which is going to retrieve our customer order, which is another callable test case that'll return, and then compare some values to what we expect them to be, such as the order number that's tied to that customer name and the billing address matches what we expect it to be. So once all that is validated, we've done our full end-to-end user journey. We've created a new account, we've logged in, we've browsed, we've purchased products, and then we've got our confirmation here as well. With some pauses and things, it took roughly over 4 minutes, but if we were to run this through, it would take less than a couple minutes to execute this full end-to-end scenario inside of Commerce Cloud using UI, API, and email components.